Good morning. Thank you for joining this T-Impact webinar. The webinar will start in approximately 2 to 3 minutes. Thank you. Thank you for joining this T-Impact webinar. We're just waiting for 1 or 2 people to sign out. I can see a few more people who are coming through now. So if you just bear with us for about 2 minutes and we will begin. Thank you. Well, good morning, and it's nice to see so many people on the webinar this morning. We've got over 80 people attending, which is great to see, despite the snow. So if you're not based in the UK, I can see we've got a lot of people from overseas joining us this morning. We're in the middle of a blizzard. It's about -5 degrees where we are. Fantastic snow outside the windows. So it's a good day to be working at home and be on a webinar with T-Impact. So welcome to everyone this morning. My name is, let's get this working. My name is Tim Pinchin, and I'm an RPA specialist with T-Impact. And I'll be talking to you for the next 45 minutes or so about this emerging technology of robotic process automation. And this webinar is going to run as follows. So we'll start with an overview of digital transformation, and I'll take a couple of minutes to outline the best approach to a digital transformation project and where robotic process automation fits into the digital transformation landscape. I'm then going to give you an introduction to robots and the different types of robots you can deploy in your organization. I'm going to show you a demonstration video of a robot we developed internally at T-Impact for a marketing process, and talk to you about how that relates to processes in your own organization. And then I'm going to share with you typical costs and timescales for a first robotics deployment. So it's a really interesting section, gives you a really clear idea of what it might cost, how long it will take to deploy. And I hope that'll be a pleasant surprise for some people on the call. And then with all of those basics out of the way, I'll be diving into our executive 8-step guide to a successful robotics deployment. And that covers everything you need to know to make sure that your robotics deployment is effective and sustainable. And then I'll end by just telling you a little bit about T-Impact, who we are, and about our unique to the market robotics subscription service, which enables you to start on your journey to automation with very little risk. There'll be time for questions at the end. So you should be able to see on your screen, you have on the right-hand side a panel, and at any point you can add a question in there. Those will come straight through to me, and I will work on those at the end. You are all in sort of in mute mode at the moment, so if you could, just because of the number of people on the call, if you could put your questions in now, I will deal with them towards the end of the day, towards the end of the session. And the other thing to say is that I will be sharing with everyone who attends and everyone who signed up and who hasn't attended the deck and a video recording of the webinar at the end of the session. So there's no need to take too many screenshots or notes. It'll all be available for you at the end. So let's start with digital transformation overview. So robotics is one of the tools in your toolbox to support your digital transformation journey. But I just want to start by ensuring that you've seen the correct methodology for running a successful digital transformation program. Because you might come on this call and think, robot, let's just buy a robot, it'll solve all our problems. But we know that that simply isn't true. Firstly, you need to define the changes that you require in your organization to meet your future vision, and identify how technology can support that. So that's about understanding how your business works today and how you want it to work in the future, and what technology you need to put over the top of that to make that a success. And we call that disruptive business architecture. Secondly, you need to implement the business and technology projects to meet your objectives. So it's not just about technology. Change, as we all know, is also all about people, because they're at the core of your business. And so a well-implemented project will always consider the technology and humans and how they work together and how they interact to ensure a successful outcome. And thirdly, you need to define how you're going to measure the success of the project and how you'll use these insights to improve what you're doing as the future. So as your business continues to improve and grow, how the metrics that you can see from your technology deployments are improving what you do for the future. And to give you just a little bit more detail on these steps, usually during the defined stage, we'll be looking at the existing and future states of the process you're planning to automate. And we use tools like value stream analysis and mapping, understanding your organizational capability, looking at how you report on performance, and look at the technology that you've got today and the data flows and how your processes work. During implementation, robotics is then one of the tools at your disposal to automate processes and workflow, and that's the one I'm going to be talking about today. Other technologies are suitable for different scenarios and sit in what we call digital services layer, and these include things like business process management suites, business rules, cognitive AI, low code, and other systems like that. And then at the measure phase, you should be looking at measuring benefits and how you will deploy real-time analysis of service level agreements, or even predictive analysis for your processes. So that's all the time I'm going to spend on methodology. I know you're interested in hearing more about robotics and the technology. The only thing I will say is that it's important not to underestimate these 3 steps. And the way I like to bring this to life is to talk to you about the 3 questions that your CEO is going to ask you as you're developing a robotics project. And they're going to ask, what's the objective of it? Why are you doing a robotics project? How is it going to affect the existing team? So the 20 people that it's going to affect, what's it going to do to them? And then, you know, the question that we all know you're going to get asked is, well, has that been a success? Was that worth the money we spent on it? What following a basic methodology enables you to do is answer all those questions really easily and actually make sure that it is a success. So it ensures the success of the project. So it was worth spending just 5 minutes at the start of this just to talk about that, just so that you understand it's not just about buying a piece of technology and trying to implement it. There's more to it than that. So let's get started with the robotics. So robotic process automation sits in this range of technology solutions, as I mentioned earlier. It's not going to have a massive, massive impact like something like a process automation solution, which spans your entire business, but it is going to have a significant impact, and it's very low effort to deploy. So we're talking about 4 to 6 weeks. You can go from something which has been causing your business a headache for years to having a robotics solution that is working. And where do you use it, and where do you not use it? Well, you need to make sure that robotics deployment is going to deliver you a positive ROI for your organization. But what are the typical use cases? So we look for standardized processes, which can be rules-based. And a really good way to identify a candidate for RPA is looking for where you have people or teams of people doing something we call swivel chair integration. So this is the kind of activity where you see people transferring data from one system into another, and they're keying and rekeying information. So you'll be walking around the office and see people who have 2 screens open on their screen. They're transferring data straight from one system into another system. They're doing that all day. And these are great candidates for RPA, particularly if you're doing it at scale. But I'll show you a bit later on how you can build a business case for this when you've got as little as one person completing this sort of work today, or you've got one particularly high value person who's doing admin tasks, repetitive tasks as a portion of their day. And it's, robotics is right in a lot of cases, but there are some cases when it's not right to use robotics. We're not trying to get people to adopt robotics when it's the wrong solution. So, if you've got large processes that cover many departments in your organization, something like business process management might be a better fit. Or if the work is low volume, you only do it once or twice a month, you won't see an ROI from a robotics deployment. And then thirdly, if you're using systems that change really frequently, so if you have a significant number of changes in that system, really regular updates which fundamentally change the way that those systems work, you'll find robotics isn't a great solution for you. But all the customers that we've worked with have got robust systems, changes are well managed, well understood, and that just means that robotics just works fantastically well for them. So let's look at robots, the type of robots that are available to you and where to use them. So I've covered this slide in my previous diatribe, but let's have a look at the robots that are available to you. So firstly, you've got an office worker robot. These work on a dedicated machine or in the cloud, and they can be what's called attended or unattended. So that means really that they're set running by a user or a schedule, or they work more autonomously. You'd give them a user ID and a password for every IT system that they need to use. And amongst other things, that allows you to monitor their activity. They can work with any program that you work on a computer. So anything that is accessed from your network. So the basic things like the Microsoft Word suite, but also any of your custom systems, any online systems that you're using, social media, Salesforce, CRM, anything like that. And in short, any action that a human performs today on a computer can be automated with this type of robot. If you've got somebody sitting there doing it, it can be automated by a robot. Secondly, we've got a supervisor robot. And this can run and manage the work of a team of virtual workers, a team of robots. So we all know that in organizations you get workload peaks, which can be hard to predict and manage. But this intelligent operations robot means that you can better organize your virtual workforce and utilize the robots that you've deployed to manage your service levels. So with this robot, you can take multiple jobs and start multiple jobs on the same robot and execute work items one after another. And you can schedule robots to start or stop activities at a predefined time and place those uncompleted actions in a backlog for action later. So for instance, if you haven't finished the work during the working day, to then run those between 9 and midnight in the evening to get that work ready for the next morning. You can prioritize your robots to manage work queues based on your service level agreements. So what that means is, if your robots are performing a series of tasks, one of them is looking likely you're not going to hit your promised service level agreement, you can move your team of virtual workers all onto that one process to finish it off before moving them back across the processes that they were working on before. And you can also set these robots to give you live notifications to ensure that you know exactly where you are with your processes and you can deal with any bottlenecks before they appear. So on cognitive automation, we're now starting to get a lot more advanced. And as a company, T-Impact, we run more in-depth sessions on cognitive automation, on AI and advanced features of robotics, which you're very welcome to attend, and we will send you all some invites for those events. But here we're talking about robots who are performing more intelligent functions and can take on board some basic reasoning capability. So they can perform tasks like sentiment analysis of text and identification of keywords to extract and understand the meaning of emotion of language, and then use this as the basis for the next step decisions. So let's say you're looking for keywords from a text. So a good example of this is, say, looking for password reset. So in a large organization, an IT service desk might deal with hundreds of password resets a day, people who've forgotten their logon details for the system. And robots can be set up to look for specific words. So if they were reading an email text and looking for things like the words like username or password or reset or forgotten and typical words like that, then they can understand that the meaning of that email is that this user has forgotten their password, and automatically regenerate a new password and send it off to them without any human interaction. And it's just one example of something that might take 5 or 10 minutes from a person to do, but the robot can do automatically instantly, and it will save over the course of a day in a large volume organization. That will save you hours and days of time. And then it can do things like cross-reference keywords against a knowledge base. So if it's got a database of knowledge about, say, a group of products, if you're asking questions about those products, it could return the appropriate product information about that product. But other applications that are quite exciting include things like optical character recognition, so reading text that's written or that is printed. So for instance, scanning in of invoices can be automated. And things like speech recognition or face detection, or looking for fraud, so looking for unusual transactions or looking for where risk might exist in transactions or in processing. So there's quite a lot of operations now, and robotics is getting really quite advanced. An extensible OCR I just touched on, but robots can really have kind of got to the point now where they can read scanned fax or even handwritten documents. And for when they're reading type that is produced by a computer, we usually see at least 96% optical character recognition accuracy. So you're starting to get very near the same level of accuracy that humans will see in transposing letters and numbers from printed text. So it's quite powerful. So now it's time to take a look. I've done a bit of talking. Let's show you a video of a robot running, and this is a video that we've put together. It was developed with us at T-Impact for a solution that we face every week. Now, every week we get, through our website and through other sources, lots of inquiries about robotic process automation, what it can do, how we can come and help people to deliver it. And also from people who might be downloading content from our site or listening to webinars or other things like that. And our marketing team takes all of those people, populates their information into Salesforce, which is our CRM tool. Now, it's a relatively simple process, but it's manual, and it involves taking details and data from various systems, online and offline, and then repopulating that data across various online and offline systems and appending information from social media sources. So what it actually does is logs into various things like our Office 365 subscription, into Salesforce, into LinkedIn, into the back end of our website. And this process was taking several hours to do per week, and we just knew that it would be a good candidate for RPA and a great example to show you on this call. So what did we do? Well, we started, rather than just deploying the technology and hoping it would work, as we discussed earlier, we know that's not going to work. We started by understanding the current process and looking at what we did. Now, this is a map from IBM, a tool called IBM Blueworks Live, which is a fantastic process modeling and mapping tool. You might use Visio for process modeling or another tool, but we find this is really powerful. And here we've mapped out how the process works and what we did at each stage. And then we've color-coded the process steps. So the red sections in this are the steps which could be automated, which didn't need to be performed by a human. So you can see here that the entire process was actually just people moving data from one system to another, or logging into systems and collecting data, and it's a complete waste of our time. So what does it look like now that we've automated it? So this is the updated 2B process map, and literally now we log into the RPA system, we run the solution, and it does the entire work for us. And this is one of these examples where it is a fairly low volume process, but it was done by an expensive marketing team once a week, and it was using up a lot of their time, which could be used elsewhere. And so it does have a value and an ROI that could be proved. So I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to show you the video, and then I will be back with you. So I hope you found that enjoyable. Running it, the second half of the video, running it at full speed, you can really see the capability a lot better. So it takes around 15 seconds now to complete a task, which used to take us a couple of hours. And it's accurate because it's picking up the data, it's reading text directly off a screen. It doesn't make the mistakes that the marketing team used to make. So it does everything hugely efficiently. So now we're going to look at those important considerations for taking a robotic solution into your business, including the costs and the time that it takes to build. I want to explain a little bit about the most important sections of the design and where the cost really sits before we sort of get into the actual pricing section. But this is the breakdown of where the elements of the cost really sit for building a robotics solution. So we start with the time taken for stakeholder alignment. So understanding the objectives, the scopes, and the KPIs for the deployment. And then the part that we did on our internal robot, so that business architecture part is understanding where things work today, the impacts it's going to have on the team, and how a robotics deployment fits in with the business takes up about 20% of the time. The design of the robot is actually then a relatively small part of the process. If you get that first part right, the understanding of how it's going to impact the team and the way that the team works today, the build then becomes quite straightforward. But the element on top of that is what we call defensive programming. So that is building the robot in a way that it is robust if anything changes or if anything breaks. You don't want a robot that falls apart every 2 or 3 days. And if you build a robot in a week, you will get a robot that breaks every 2 or 3 days. You need to understand that process, understand how it works, understand where the data is coming from, and build in exceptions, every exception that's possible in order that that robot, if something changes, it's ready for it. Then there's 20% of the cost is the build cost. Around 5% is for the robotics licenses. And then really important, once it's been deployed, that reworking, the testing, making sure that it's all built and is running correctly. And that'll ensure that you get that deployment right the first time. So here's an example of what a typical robotics deployment might cost with T-Impact and with a comparison with other vendors. So we are a partner with UiPath, and they are one of the 3 leading robotics firms, as recognized by Gartner and Forrester. We also do work with Blue Prism and Automation Anywhere, but for our subscription service, we find that UiPath enables us to price it most competitively. And we find that UiPath robots are really good, are really powerful, and develop and really straightforward to develop, so that we can offer you something really, really powerful. But what can we see on the screen here? So typically, large vendors have a minimum limit on the number of robots you can buy, number of robot licenses, and that's usually 10. So the cost per robot, when you've put in the licenses plus the build costs, usually comes to around £50,000. But because of this minimum size, that means you're looking at £500,000 worth of initial investment in your robotic solution. And for most firms, that's simply not viable. Even if you're just buying the licenses at £10,000 each, is £100,000. And it's just, how you're going to have to replace at least 5 members of staff or find some other cost efficiencies elsewhere, and it's just not viable. But we approach it in a completely different way with UiPath. And we've built a managed virtual environment to run robotic solutions. And therefore, we can develop solutions in a really cost-effective way, which really maximizes the value of your investment. So on a time and materials basis, depending on the scope, obviously, but a typical deployment would cost around £37,000, which isn't an insignificant amount of money, but it's not in the same realms as what you might be paying elsewhere. But we've actually packaged this up in a completely different way to minimize the risk for you. And we've done it as a subscription service, so think of it robotics as a service. And that means that you pay a subscription fee, a setup fee, which incorporates all of the planning and the build and the business architecture, so understanding your business and making sure that the robot works properly, and that's £7,500. And then we run it on an OPEX model for £1,750 a month after that, so a license cost of £1,750. And it means that the cost over the first year is around about £22,000, but it's done on a monthly subscription basis, so it's not all up front. And when you look at it like that, it's around about the same price as hiring an additional person into the team, and that's all. And it means that you can now justify the ROI for building a robotics solution by just not hiring one new person for the team when your workload increases, or being able to free up the work of one person to do something else in the organization. But of course, based on that subscription model, if you have a process which is being run by 2 or 3 people today, or even by a team that's slightly larger than that, the ROI is really dramatic for a robotics deployment. So I'll come back to a little bit of pricing at the end, but to give you an idea of how long it takes to deploy, you've probably heard that you can build a robot in 5 days, 10 days. And yes, you can, but as I said earlier, if you do that, it will break after 4 days and you'll stop using it and you'll never prove the value to the teams internally. So what you can do is build a robust robotic solution in less than 6 weeks, which is comprehensive and designed to suit the needs of the business. And here's our sample timeline. So it'll take around a week to organize and run a stakeholder workshop, which helps scope the solution. The first project development, which includes understanding the way that your business works and building your as-is process and to-be processes and dealing with internal change management, will then take a further 4 to 5 weeks. And that follows our proven methodology. And then in this example I've got on the screen, that's an example for a pilot project, so a first project you want to run. If you only want to build one project, that's fine. That's how long it takes. But if you're then building robots with a view to rolling it out in the organization and perhaps building 5 or 6 additional processes, you can then spend some time to assess the ROI that's realized, take that out to the rest of the business and start to scale and build further robotics deployments. And this is the sample that we're using with one of our customers at the moment. We've built a robotics pilot for them, which has been successful. It's been shown to the rest of the business. And now they have come along with, I think, 6 additional processes that they want to build with a robotics solution. So with that out of the way, you now know how and when to deploy a robot, what the different types are and how they work, along with what a project will cost and how long it will take to deploy. And you've also seen a demo of a robot running, and I hope that was impactful. We're now going to take a look at our 8-step guide to a successful deployment. And this guide's available to download from our website to support this webinar, but you can also even request a paper copy from me if you'd like after the webinar to put on your CEO's desk. So if you take nothing else away from this webinar today, do take away this section which really provides you with this guide to running a successful robotics project. So at T-Impact, we say on the homepage of our website that we exist because we hate waste and we can't stand failure. And we've been asked to help many companies who've had unsuccessful technology deployments and spent millions of pounds building solutions that were either never launched or never completed. And as a company, we're determined to stop this in the future, and that's our reason for existing. And this is our guide to how to do it. So when you're setting out on a robotics project, you need to start with shared objectives and scope. And I said this earlier in the presentation, but don't underestimate the effect on people of technology implementations. So before you begin, you need to ensure that you've got sponsorship from the business and business sponsors that are running that, that the stakeholders and subject matter experts are all on the same page. Because projects fail because people don't have all the same expectations of what it's going to achieve. So then select a pilot project to run, which is easy enough to succeed, but substantial enough to impress and will not be blocked by change-resistant teams. So you need something with a wow factor that's going to dramatically improve profitability, efficiency, quality, or reduce risk, but don't choose something spanning multiple countries and touched by 10 different departments. You've got to prove the value first, get people excited, and they will come to you for running the next project. Part two, when you're finding someone to build the solution, you've got to choose someone who shares or reduces the risk. If you're talking to a vendor who's talking about more than £50,000 up front and a minimum deployment of 10 robots, you've got to seriously consider your options because it's just not viable for a pilot project. So look for a partner who's got experience implementing fast-paced digital solutions with the right development skills and who understands your projects and your organization. They take the time to understand your organization. And then model your business architecture. But really don't underestimate this step. Here's another example at the top of a process model from Blueworks Live. Without understanding how your process works today and identifying and removing waste, your robot is just going to make the same mistakes that you make today, but it's going to do it faster. You've got to use this deployment as an opportunity to look at your process, improve it, take out the steps that are waste, and then accelerate the improvements that you'll see from the robotic solution. Great things to look for, defects, bottlenecks, and steps which are causing other teams headaches, what we call failure demands. So processes and steps in a process which cause problems for other teams further on down the line. You've got to understand how you will measure success, and you need to do this before you begin the deployment. Or how are you going to answer those questions from your CEO that we talked about at the beginning? You've got to do this by engaging with the teams involved, understanding how they're measured, how you will know that the solutions improve things like customer satisfaction, reduction in time and cost, and reduction in risk. Design the robotic solution to support your findings from those first 4 steps. So you've done all the hard work, you've understood how the business works, how the processes work today, but then make sure that you design that robotic solution to deliver the solution and the improvements that it's promised. Use your architecture design to define the human-robot handoff and determine the complexity of the solution required, and then design to deliver the maximum level of benefits to customers and the business, particularly using that business architecture design to challenge and overcome change resistance where it occurs. Stage 6 is about designing for exceptions, and this is the defensive programming. So one of the key elements to success in your robotics deployment is understanding exceptions. Systems change over time, and the way that one person completes a task is often different from the way that another person does it. So they all have workarounds. We all know the person who might keep a copy of an Excel file on their desktop because it's easier to access than going into the CRM system or going into one of the other backend systems and downloading it every day. They keep a spare copy of it on their desktop. So that's a workaround that you need to know about. You need to put processes in place to stop that happening, but ensure that that activity is picked up in some way in the solution. And take the time in the deployment to program robustly for these eventualities and to manage exceptions in the most customer-focused way possible. So some good examples might be programming the robots to automatically email an administrator if it experiences an exception it hasn't dealt with before, or giving a robot 2 different ways to log into a system. So if one fails, for instance, if a login's changed by a third party, the robot automatically requests a password reset rather than just falling over. You can program the robot to ensure that at restarts, there's no duplication or gaps, and programming it to do something if files that it's looking for have been removed or deleted. So rather than just falling over again, to email somebody and find out where they are, to let somebody know that the files there are not where they expected them to be, or to go and search for them somewhere else on the system. And those kind of deployments can really, those kind of improvements to robotic programming can really make a difference to how your robot runs in the future. Stage 7 is all about disrupting, innovating, and optimizing. And it's about continuous improvement. So when you're deploying a robotic solution, really do adopt this idea that you want to change what you're doing, you want to do something innovative, and you want to optimize it and keep going round and round the circle. And then finally, to maximize the potential of that solution. So you might be looking just to build a single solution for a single problem, and that's great. It's a great way to do something with robotics and find a solution to a problem that you've got today. You might be looking at a pilot project, the first project to prove the value of robotics before you do a bigger development. And that approach will help you ensure that you get sponsorship, evidence, and successful implementation of your solution. And just don't forget to engage business teams to look for other opportunities to deploy robotics using that first project as a guide. So finally, let's just take a look at the benefits of robotics, what you can expect to see, and how those can be amplified by looking at a low-risk cost model to start with. So what can we hope to deliver from a robotics project? So firstly, there's efficiency improvements. One robot can complete the work of 20 staff today. So that's from a capacity point of view, that's what you can expect. If you've got a team of 20 who are performing repetitive tasks, that work can be done by a robot. You can expect rapid deployment. Robotic solution can be live in just a short number of weeks. So instead of having to wait 2 years in the deployment queue for your organization, this can be done very quickly. You're not just automating the work that's done by humans today either. So one other point that I like is what we've been talking about is a robot that has what we call superhuman capabilities. So this robot is operating 20 times faster than a human, and it gives you the capabilities to do things that may not in the past have been possible. And this is where it kind of gets exciting, because let's give you an example. Let's say you have a database which is not very clean and you're looking to clean it up, and you're thinking about employing somebody or a couple of people to go through all the records, check them, make sure that they make sense, and generally clean the database up. Now, if you deploy a robot to do that, you can set up the workflows, the robot can do the cleaning for you, and it'll work through your database and clean the database. And now the database is in a good state, and you've got a robot sitting there, and you're wondering what you can do with it. But because this robot works 20 times faster than a human, this robot can now keep that database up to date, because it can cycle back through that database in a day, because it works 24/7. So this means that now you've got a robot that can clean your entire database every day and keep all of the information up to date and add any new information, because it's not having to do a massive job again to go through everything. What it's doing now is optimizing as it goes through. And so suddenly you've got a really competitive edge, because you have this superhuman capability. It would take a team of 20 people to do that, but you're doing it every day because you've deployed a robot. So that's a really interesting way to look at it. Cost reduction is another big area for benefits. So above and beyond it completing the work of 20 people, it also doesn't have any of those people costs that are associated with it. So there's no holiday, it doesn't take any breaks, it doesn't have any agency fees, it doesn't take any pay rises. I was reading this week that the average cost to a business of losing a member of staff is £30,000. And that is in terms of the time taken to re-recruit somebody, the lost efficiency, the lost profitability, and maybe the cost of recruiting. So it's a huge amount of money. And with a robot, you don't get any of that rubbish that you get with people. And then risk and regulatory control. I haven't talked a lot about this up until now, but the great thing about robots is they are predictable. They do predictable things. They do what you tell them to do, and they're auditable. Everything is stored. All of the audit trails for all of the work is stored and accessible. And you only have to train them once. There's no risk in terms of employment legislation. And what they do 100% error-free. So that can give you, huge value where quality is important in your organization. So I just want to talk to you now about how you can accelerate those benefits, the realization of those benefits with a subscription service, because we've developed this subscription service so that we basically take the risk of the deployment for you. You pay a small amount up front and then monthly ongoing, but the overall cost is very low. And obviously, if you're getting if you're not getting what you expect out of it, you'll stop paying the subscription charge. So it's got 7 sort of key factors that go above and beyond buying a robot and deploying it on a computer in your premises. So there's little or no commercial risk. We spread the cost and offer you an easy monthly subscription. There's no technical risk because we will analyze your business, design a robot, and monitor it to keep working. So part of the subscription service includes 4 hours a month of monitoring and improvements included in the price. And it's controlled. We maintain generations of robots. So should anything go wrong with your solution or anything in your system, we're on hand to put it right and fix it. We support you with our 4 hours of dedicated time each month. And it's completely secure. There's no concerns. If you're really concerned, we can deploy it on your premise, but on the cloud, it is on an encrypted virtual machine. All access is IP controlled, so it's completely secure. And that machine just sits on your network, but in the cloud. And it's responsive. It's faster than a human, available 24 hours a day if you need it. So, if you've got work queues that build up over the weekend, you can have those done ready for you on Monday morning when you get in. One of our customers had a team of people who used to spend around about 24 hours total working time per week over Saturday and Sunday, ensuring that logistics journeys, or delivery journeys basically, were planned for the next week by taking orders and working that through. And we've deployed a robot for them to solve that problem. We freed up 2 or 3 members of staff who used to work all weekend to do that, who are absolutely delighted that they no longer have to do that work because it wasn't value add, it was just because the systems didn't work properly. And that's a great example of where we've managed to deploy robotics successfully and really impact people's lives. So just to go back, just to cover off very quickly, again, the specific pricing for our subscription service. So our attended robot we call Dolores. We've named them so that you know which one you're getting. She works from a dedicated machine installed in your dedicated environment, and she costs £7,500 to set up, and then just £1,750 per month ongoing on that. And in most cases, in fact, we haven't yet come to a deployment where we've needed to use the next one up to do normal tasks. So Dolores is, in 95% of cases, the robot that you will need to perform the tasks that humans do today. Hector is an unattended robot. There's not a lot of difference between these two, except in some of the capabilities. But like I say, in 95% of cases, Dolores is what you need. But Hector is £10,000 to set up and £2,750 a month. And then Sarah, the supervisor robot that I was talking about. So this is, if you're talking about a deployment of 5 or more robots on multiple processes, and you're looking to be able to change the workflows, change what they do from day to day, get them to manage different SLAs at different times, Sarah will need to sit over the top of your team of robots to manage their workflow. And she is £1,750 to set up and £4,000 a month ongoing. So it really is no longer at the point where you need to set aside £100,000 for a robotics deployment. You can build this for £7,500 up front and £1,750 a month ongoing, which, like I said at the beginning, is just £22,000 a year, or just over £22,000 a year. And then in the second year, obviously the setup fee doesn't apply, so it gets cheaper. So it's a very cost-effective way of taking the work of 1 or 2 people, or teams of 50 people in a big deployment, and proving a really powerful ROI. So I'm coming to the end of the presentation now. I just wanted to talk very quickly a little bit about T-Impact. So we're T-Impact, we're a digital transformation specialist. Robotic process automation is one of our absolute specialisms, and we're working with various customers at the moment delivering robotic solutions. We've delivered robotic solutions for HSBC, for Hackney, for a company called PCML. We're working with Durham County Council. We are also working with several legal firms to deliver quite exciting robotics projects. So we've been doing this for quite a while. We're hugely experienced. Hackney is really interesting. Hackney is the example that I was talking about in terms of a pilot project. They they asked us to deliver for them a pilot project for direct debit payments through the web, so to automate that system, which was hugely successful. And we're now delivering a 6-robot deployment for them of a series of other processes within the organization, where the people in the organization have taken the success of that pilot project, sold it to other people in the organization, if you like, and got us in to come and deliver those. So it's a huge success. And at HSBC, we're talking about a massive rollout of Blue Prism robots, who are looking at basically understanding whether or not they could give credit for mortgages, loans, and other financial vehicles to customers based on information about their history. And so, you know, we've got the experience in this space to really deliver powerful projects, and we really like to talk to anyone on the call who's interested to know more. We've worked with some really fantastic brands over the years, and we are very proud of the work that we've done, but we really work to deliver powerful projects for customers that impact their business. And so that's everything from the formal part of the presentation completed now. I'd like to ask at this point if anybody has any questions that they'd like to raise. And I can see several questions in the question pane, so I will do that. Just quickly, I did say at the beginning, but I'll say it again, I'm going to send a link to the webinar and all of the information through after the presentation, so that will be coming through to you shortly. One of the questions that we get asked quite a lot is that lots of RPA deployments seem to be in big organizations with lots of robots, and we're wondering, and really asking the question if it's realistic to do it elsewhere in a smaller company. I hope I've kind of answered that question. I've brought that information a little bit more into my presentation than I have done before, but just to say sort of categorically, we can prove the ROI for a process which is run today by 1 or 2 people. So all companies have got an operations function or a finance function, sales and marketing function, data coming through from websites, from sales or things, or from e-commerce. And lots of those today require manual data processing. And looking around the organization, if you're seeing people who are working with paper on their desks, or who are working with that kind of split screen where you've got one system on the left, one system on the right, and they're moving data left and right and across, you will be able to find a deployment for robotics which we can prove an ROI for. So that's one thing. Someone else has asked about low code on earlier on in the presentation. So one of the other systems that we talked about was what we call low code, which is another system that we can sort of deploy on our digital transformation layer. It's more of a, rather than being one specific thing, it's more of a way of describing a slightly more, well, a less involved solution for certain technologies. So for instance, so I haven't described that very well, but for instance, if you were thinking of deploying a business process management solution, which can be an incredibly big deployment, people are now coming onto the market who have created low code BPMS. And that involves really, it's a drag and drop interface. There's little or no code required to build a workflow in this solution. And so it's able to be managed and understood better by business teams rather than IT teams. But I would say low code, so that's low code for BPMS. It's something that's sort of becoming quite popular for lots of more complicated, large technology solutions where typically that work's been done by IT and it may have taken several months to get into a deployment schedule, but where that work can now be managed more easily by business-facing teams. So I hope that answers that question. If you'd like to know more, or would you like me to give you a bit more information, please just drop me an email after this presentation. But if that's everything, I will let you get back to your day. Please, everyone, watch out in the snow. Make sure you drive home carefully. And thank you very much for attending the T-Impact webinar this morning. Thank you very much. Goodbye.